going to go get high, if you're not sick because you didn't get high, like, what do you do? Like, that's where my brain was. And, you know, so then I got to a point where I loved my job at East Ridge, but I wanted more. You know, I was grateful. I was very grateful for where I was at, but I wanted more. And what was that? And I decided, you know, I wanted to be an EMT. There were multiple times that I had interactions with them in my addiction, and it was like a light bulb. Like, this is what I want to do. So a lot of people told me I couldn't because of my record. A lot of people told me I couldn't because of my history, and I did it anyway. I ended up getting my EMT card. I got a job at a transport place, which I was happy with, but again, it's not what I wanted. I had my mind set on 911. And I worked my way up, and Berkeley County hired me back in October and gave me full-time in January. You know, and today I go on these calls. Almost every overdose we run is someone I know. It's a small town, and I feel like I know a good amount of people. I mean, there's some people I don't know, but it, you know, hits home just the same. A lot of people ask me if it's hard on me, and it is in a sense of my, you know, that I feel for them in their situation, but it also keeps me very humble, because at any moment, you know, I know that I can be right back in that spot. And every time that I leave an overdose scene, the first thing I do to myself is thank God that you got me out of this, because I remember when the situations I walk into with my job were normal to me. That was normal living situation, and today it's not. You know, I look at my children, and they deserve to have their mother. I feel that I deserve to have my children. And when I talk to people with addiction, I see the person. I do. I don't see just the addiction. I think a lot of people struggle with that. I think a lot of people only see the negative side of addiction, especially people in EMS. All they run up on are overdose calls. That's all they see. They see the negative. And I think that they struggle with understanding that they are people, and there are so many people in recovery doing so many amazing. I think they forget that I'm in recovery, to be completely honest, because I look like an everyday person, and I act the way an everyday person does because I am an everyday person who happens to have an addiction. I just do something about it. And that's another thing I think is important, is people need to realize with addiction, I am so big on speaking on treatment and rehab, because I had a lot of underlying issues that had led me into my addiction. If I would have you can get anyone physically clean, but if you don't work on the whole reason why you got high in the first place, it's going to creep back up on you. And I believe that's what happened to me the first few times, because I refused to work on my trauma. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to relive it. And then when I finally took it seriously and tried to figure out how to somewhat move past it, is when I started to see changes. Another huge part for me is, you know, my relationship with God. Through prison, once I just made the decision that I was gonna stay clean and I had nothing but time to be close with God, it was the most at peace I've ever been in my life in prison. And like, internally, nothing could have fazed me emotionally. I was completely okay with where I was at, and I think it's because how connected I was with God. You know, and it is harder when you're not locked up in a facility and you're out in everyday life around everyday life people, and it is hard to remain mindful. But I think that it gives me a good set of ground rules of being mindful of wanting to be a better person, wanting to love people, wanting to show people in addiction what I wish was shown to me in my addiction. I never want to be the person to make someone feel judged or less than. I want them to know that I see their worth and that they are more than capable of doing so. I think the community, you know, there's a big part of our community that has a very harsh outlook on addicts because of the things that come with addiction. Addicts do some crappy things. But I think people struggle with understanding that if they weren't trapped in this addiction, I did things in my addiction that I would never do today. And I'm not saying it's an excuse for the things I did, but I'm saying it was driven behind something. It takes over you. And rehab is something I stand on, because long-term treatment, the longer you give yourself time to get back into logical thinking and normal thinking, the more of a chance you have when you finally leave that facility. I'm big on, aftercare. You can't throw someone in a facility for a year and then throw them out in real life and good luck. No, they're accustomed to what they've been doing for 5-10 years. They need retraining. I needed retraining. I didn't know what to do with the money. Okay, you give me a job, I got a job. What do I do with the money I'm getting from this job? I'm used to spending it on drugs, so what do I spend it on now? Bills, okay. How do I didn't know how to be an adult. And a lot of addicts don't, they need help. And some people hate the idea of helping another adult, and that is what these people need. They need support, and that's another reason why I like rehab. A lot of addicts don't have a great support system. Going into rehab, you're surrounded by people that are in the same boat as you, just trying to do the next right thing, just trying to stay alive, and you build that support group. So that's my main thing, I guess, is I think people forget that a lot of these addicts started when they were kids. I was a kid. I was 16. I was still a child. And, so the 23-year-old addict that you see that you're aggravated with, she probably started drugs at 15. And hasn't had anyone to really reach out and try to get her in somewhere. I try to use my place at my job now to do that, because I'll hand out numbers to resources all day. I don't care. You don't have to promise me anything, just here's the number. And I think if there were more people doing little things like that, we would see a better outcome. So that's all I have, but thank you.